In 1932, brothers Charles and Joseph Revson began peddling an early form of nail polish. Among the colors on offer was a distinctive tint they called Cherries in the Snow. When they joined forces with the chemist Charles Lockman, the cosmetic giant Revlon was born. In 1940, they branched out into lipsticks. Revlon was one of the first brands that made a matching lips and tips range, and in 1953, they debuted the Cherries in the Snow lipstick that became a cult classic, still going strong over 70 years later. The color remains in production today and is remarkably similar to the original formula, considering that a main color ingredient, red number 2, was banned for cosmetic use in the 1970s. The color is described as a deep raspberry red with cool undertones, but can also appear more pink depending on one's skin tone. Popular media of the era, like Leave It to Beaver and The Donna Reed Show, would suggest that America in the 1950s was somewhat of a domestic bliss. But the reality of a woman's role and her general satisfaction or dissatisfaction with her lot in life at the time tells a slightly different story.
Girls are kind of lucky, don't they, Mom?
Why do you say that?
Well, they don't have to be smart. They don't have to get jobs or anything. All they gotta do is get married.
As Hilary Clark, a beauty editor and makeup artist, explains, Cherries in the Snow was a lifeline for many women who felt lost and eclipsed by the happy housewife archetype of the 1950s. Its near immediate rise to iconic status was proof that the honeymoon was over for the happy homemaker. By 1953, the post-World War II stability had lost most of its charm, and many women craved the independence and purpose they had found living and working outside the home while male soldiers were on the front lines in Europe. Housewife syndrome was medically diagnosed and treated with quote-unquote happy pills to relieve feelings of anxiety, depression, and guilt for not being fulfilled by their seemingly picture-perfect lives. Revlon was known for its extensive shade range, and the company would use full-color photographic advertisements in major magazines to publicize new shades, with spreads occasionally running over 2 pages. Revlon would put a great deal of effort into promoting its new shades, the most successful campaign being Fire and Ice, which launched in the autumn of 1952. The shade was created for Charles Revson's lover at the time, Eartha Kitt. The Fire and Ice shade campaign was developed by Kay Daly, an in-house marketing executive who would later go on to join Revlon in 1961 as vice president and creative director, the company's first woman officer. When Daly was confronted with the task of creating the concept for the Cherries in the Snow ad campaign, she wrote copy that asked, "Does any man really understand you? Who knows you as you really are? Does he? Who knows the secret hopes that warm your heart? Who knows the dreams you dream, the words you've left unspoken? Who knows the black lace thoughts you think while shopping in a gingham frock? Who knows you sometimes long to sleep in pure silk sheets? Who knows you'd love to meet a man who'd hold your hand and listen while you say nothing at all? Who knows there was a morning when your orange juice sparkled like champagne? Who knows the secret siren side of you that's female as a silken cat?" The full-color print ad answers the feminine mystique anticipating questions with the promise, who else but Revlon understands you as you really are? A trifle shy, but oh so warm, and just a little reckless. Deep inside, as strange and unexpected as cherries in the snow. A far cry from the typical marketing ploy that depicted women as demure, obedient, blissfully happy housewives. The color Cherries in the Snow presented women with a new escape to channel those frustrations and embrace their playful, coquettish side in a world that often frowned upon a wife and mother expressing her sexuality. The ad campaign had featured Dorian Lee from the previously successful Fire and Ice campaign. Memorialized by the New York Times as one of history's most photographed models, Dorian Lee was a favorite of photographers Richard Avedon and Cecil Beaton, as well as writer Truman Capote, whose Breakfast at Tiffany's character, Holly Golightly, is said to have been inspired by Lee. Capote had met Lee when she was living on Lexington Avenue in New York City, using a candy store across the street as an answering service for dates that stacked up like airplanes waiting to land, as Vanity Fair recounts. Capote had given her the nickname Happy-Go-Lucky, a near homonym for Holly Golightly, the iconic party girl character he was just beginning to develop. Dorian Lee's wayward lifestyle, her restless bravado, went a long way towards the making of Capote's heroine, the slim girl of his slim volume, Breakfast at Tiffany's. When I woke up in the dull, sunless heat the next morning, I dressed and splashed my face with cold water and put on some lipstick and opened the door slowly, writes American poet and novelist Sylvia Plath in her 1963 semi-autobiographical novel, The Bell Jar, which references lipstick no fewer than 5 times. Although Plath never specifies the brand or color of this lipstick in Payne Pardy's work, Plath biographer Elizabeth Winder confirms she wore Revlon's Cherries in the Snow lipstick on her very full lips. Once you start looking, this lipstick keeps popping up everywhere. It was even burlesque star Dita Von Teese's first lipstick. She says it was the 80s, and I think I was maybe 13 or so. Not only had I gotten my hands on a tube of Revlon Cherries in the Snow, but I also had my mother's hot rollers, and I had done myself up, she told Birdie.com in 2015. I remember feeling like, I'm always wearing this red lipstick. There's nothing that's going to stop me. Most recently, you might have caught the iconic Cherries in the Snow, mentioned on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, a period comedy drama series on Amazon Prime that starts off in the late 1950s.
Great with pink.
It's the shade Midge recommends to a customer in the famous New York City department store, B. Altman.
Be sure to pick a tone. Doesn't augment that too much. Keep it subtle.
I like subtle.
That's Raven Red. Try Cherries in the Snow. That'll get you close to Quran.
Oh, I like that. A lot.
I do too.
You're a dream. Both of you. Thank you. Give me 3 of these.
I'll meet you down at the
The
restaurant.
shade also appears in a Marvelous Mrs. Maisel lipstick collection alongside Fire and Ice and Certainly Red in a 2019 collaboration with Revlon called Take the Stage Reds. Luckily, makeup historians like Hilary Clark have been able to track down original lipsticks from 50, 60, and 70 years ago so that we can see the true colors of these time periods rather than relying on marketing materials alone. And while you might be able to find a tube of vintage lipstick for cheap at your local antique store, Clark explains that depending on the condition of the case, they can range from $50 to $500.
Really compare side by side. And I have to say, while the textures are different, Revlon has done an amazing job of staying true to the shade. When I did my swatches, the undertones look different, which is to be expected when the textures are so different. The textures and the bases used then could make things look deeper on skin than they actually were. Ready? Here we go. Okay. I mean, wow. It definitely has that thicker feel. Okay. Interesting. It definitely has that thicker feel that is, common for lipsticks back then. I mean, the emollients were different. The pigments were different. It definitely has that old school opacity, whereas, modern day, we go for a sheerer lip. That's just who we are, how we like things. So a lot of it is servicing the culture. So I did a lighter swatch here so we can take a look at the undertones and see if the modern version just, suits our less glam, life and lifestyle. We are definitely less glam than they were in the 50s and 60s. The undertones are not as far off as I would have thought. There's definitely a little more, blue, a little more violet in the modern version on the skin. It's so interesting.
Revlon's current version of Cherries in the Snow comes in a super lustrous cream, matte, and high gloss finish. It has remained a beauty staple for several decades for a reason. The universal color is suitable for all skin tones, representing both a nostalgic look into our past when women wanted to be seen as more than just an extension of someone else, to our more modern times when a simple swipe of lipstick can empower and give us confidence to face the day.